Hi, welcome to Movieholics TV. Today I will explain the movie Venom 2018. Warning, spoiler ahead. The film opens as a space transport from the Life Foundation crash lands in East Malaysia. Medics show up on the scene and recuperate one survivor, space traveler J.J. Jameson III. Jameson is brought into a rescue vehicle where something that has hooked onto him has woken up and assaults those inside the vehicle, making it flip and crash. An EMT gets out of the destruction, presently playing host to the outsider element known as the symbiote. In San Francisco, we are acquainted with columnist Eddie Brock, who lives with his life partner, a legal counselor named Anne Wang, who is set to address the Life Foundation and its CEO, Carlton Drake. Eddie is notable for his TV news show, The Eddie Brock Report, where he goes through insightful stories to impart to other people. At the point when he will work, Eddie's chief sends him to meet with Drake, yet he requests that Eddie not press Drake with any inquiries concerning his work. Anne asks something similar since she realizes Eddie can be rash, which got him driven out of New York. Eddie finds an email on Anne's PC with data in regards to 3 affirmed passings coming about because of the bus crash. Against his orders, Eddie goes to talk with Drake about his space travel program, however at that point goes off content and begins to get some information about the passings and how he is answerable for them. Drake stops the meeting, and Eddie's manager fires him. Anne likewise gets terminated, and she says a final farewell to Eddie. Back in Malaysia, the EMT meanders into a neighborhood market and begins to eat an eel. The seller chides her for it, so the symbiote structures a sharp edge around her arm, and she cuts the merchant's throat. Close by spectators attempt to go after her in revenge, yet the symbiote discharges plumes that kills everybody around her. The EMT then, at that point, strolls to an old lady, and the symbiote discharges the EMT, who is currently dead, and locks onto the elderly person. A half year after the fact, Drake is proceeding with his investigation into symbiotes by having tests run on vagrants. He addresses one subject named Isaac, Jared Bankins, to cause it to appear as though he is taking on a notable errand for humankind of some sort. Drake delivers a symbiote into the room with Isaac and allows the substance to overwhelm his body. He appears all good for some time until he starts shaking, and the symbiote leaves Isaac's presently dead body, having eaten up his organs. In San Francisco, Eddie is currently jobless and alone, living in a little undesirable condo. He goes to a clothes-buy shop where he is familiar with the representative, Mrs. Chen, yet Eddie sees that she is continually getting denied of her cash by a hooligan, and he can't make any really meaningful difference. Eddie is then drawn closer by Dr. Doris Skirth, a researcher from the Life Foundation who is horrified by Drake's tests on people. She needs Eddie's assistance in uncovering Drake, yet he won't come since he couldn't care less about what befalls humankind any longer. Eddie goes to Anne's condo to visit her, just to track down her approaching back from a date with her new sweetheart, Dr. Dan Lewis. When they are separated from everyone else, Eddie confesses to Anne that he misses her and that he faults Drake for what befell him, however Anne lets him know that it's his own issue that he has wound up in a seemingly impossible situation. Eddie later calls Skirth to jump into her central goal. Skirth carries Eddie to the Life Foundation's base camp and sneaks him in. Eddie takes photos of the abhorrent presentations of the symbiote's casualties. He remembers one of the residing ones as Maria, a vagrant that Eddie is cordial with. He attempts to break her out of her cell, just for Maria to go after him. The symbiote in her body then, at that point, locks itself onto Eddie, and he runs out. Safety officers pursue Eddie, and he currently seems to have improved strength and dexterity, permitting him to get away. Drake and his kin find Maria's body and realize that there is a symbiote example running wild. Drake gets Skirth to concede that Eddie was involved, and he passes on her inside a cell to be killed by another symbiote. Drake then sends a group of hired fighters drove by Roland Treese to pursue Eddie. Eddie begins to encounter peculiar side effects. He has a craving for bizarre food decisions, among them are frozen potato toddlers and spoiled meat, and he feels like he has a fever. He likewise begins to hear a low, snarling voice addressing him. He finds Anne and Dan out on the town where he flaunts how wrecked he is while likewise going through other people group's food, and afterward sitting in a lobster tank to eat live lobsters. Ann and Dan figure they need to help Eddie. Dan does a MRI test on Eddie, yet the recurrence from the test causes a difficult bending in Eddie's mind. Back home, Eddie is by in torment when his neighbor plays his music excessively boisterous. Eddie goes to advise him to turn it down and is laughed at until the symbiote transforms Eddie's face into a huge structure, and the neighbor quickly concurs. Minutes after the fact, Treese and his hooligans break into Eddie's home to catch him. Eddie attempts to give up, yet the symbiote has different plans. As the mercs assault, Eddie winds up fending them off automatically with the assistance of the symbiote. Treese records this to flaunt to Drake, who is stunned that Eddie is a fitting counterpart for the symbiote. Eddie then, at that point, escapes his loft as more mercs begin to appear. Eddie is pursued through the city as he tracks down a cruiser to ride. The symbiote assists him with taking out the thugs and furthermore move through the roads easily, until Treese bangs into Eddie with his vehicle. As he moves toward Eddie, the symbiote surpasses Eddie's entire body, changing him into Venom. Before Venom can kill Treese, another merc takes shots at him. Venom nibbles his head off and afterward withdraws. Eddie winds up close to a beacon where his bones are wonderfully recuperated. Venom, what the symbiote calls himself, addresses Eddie and says he is an extraordinary host. However, Eddie is humiliated at seeing a man's head get gnawed off. Venom lets Eddie know that to make do, he won't just agree. As Venom, Eddie moves to the highest point of his previous working environment to convey proof of Drake's wrongdoings to his old chief. He almost tumbles off the rooftop when a plane passes above and its recurrence disturbs the symbiote, yet Venom figures out how to get Eddie before he raises a ruckus around town. Subsequent to leaving the proof, Eddie attempts to leave, just for the mercs to attempt to get him again. Venom wards them off prior to withdrawing. Eddie and Ann see as one another after she goes by his loft and sees that it's a crime location, and she carries him to Dan's office for more assistance. She realizes something is the matter with Eddie. Venom advises Eddie to converse with Ann, as Venom has started to truly appreciate her. Eddie apologizes for his screw-ups, however Ann lets him know it's not the time. Dan runs one more test on Eddie and verifies that the symbiote is a parasite, which Venom could do without to be called. After Dan lets Eddie know that he and the symbiote are basically depleting each other of life, Ann turns on a high recurrence that causes the symbiote to remove from Eddie's body. Venom gets away from through the vents after Eddie leaves, and he locks himself onto a little canine. Treese and his men then at long last get Eddie and carry him to Drake. Meanwhile, the elderly woman from earlier goes to an airport and finds a small girl to use as a new symbiote host. The girl makes her way to San Francisco and finds Drake, and the symbiote then takes over Drake's body. Drake examines Eddie over the whereabouts of the symbiote. The symbiote and Drake structures around his body, naming itself Riot. Eddie discovers that Drake will probably head once again into space and find more symbiotes to take back to Earth for them to involve people as hosts. Ann finds the canine that is facilitating Venom, and she then, at that point, heads to the Life Foundation as she presently has Venom, making her She-Venom. Ann helps break Eddie free and furthermore gnaws off Treese's head, which sickens her, and she moves Venom back to Eddie through a kiss. Eddie and Venom head off to find Drake and Riot before they board the rocket. The two men battle utilizing their symbiote structures, while Ann turns on a recurrence to disturb the two of them and make the symbiotes leave their hosts. Drake sees Riot and attempts to reattach himself, however Eddie dismisses him from the edge. Eddie pivots and is skewered by Riot, who then sheets the rocket as it begins to take off. Venom tracks down Eddie and locks back onto him, recuperating the impalement wound. They then jump onto the rocket as Venom cuts open the fuel line, making the rocket detonate and burn Drake and Riot. The blazes from the rocket likewise make Venom apparently kick the bucket, as Eddie falls into the water. In a little while, Eddie and Ann seem to have retouched their relationship as companions. He specifies being approached to bring his show back and do a show on Drake, however he has different designs to meet with somebody in jail. It likewise turns out that Venom is still inside Eddie, however he stays quiet about that from Ann. Eddie leaves and chances upon an elderly person, Stan Lee, who urges him to not quit battling for what he adores. Venom additionally needs to eat the man's canine. Eddie walks around with Venom and tries to explain to him that if they are going to stick together, that he cannot just eat any person he wants, and that they may only target the really bad people. He goes into Mrs. Chen's shop, and the thug from earlier attempts to accost her for money again. Eddie morphs into Venom and devours the thug in front of Mrs. Chen. Eddie asks Venom what they should do next, and he responds that they can do whatever they want. In the mid-credits, Eddie goes to San Quentin prison for an interview with his newest subject, a serial killer by the name of Cletus Cassidy. Cassidy vows that once he is released, there will be carnage.